So much when Steve had talked to me about customer loyalty. It's so important for us, especially in a situation where I know you're not buying paint all the time, but I want to make sure, especially for our DIYers, that we're there to support them in between projects, inspiring for projects. The team I have up here with me, very similar situations as far as have some really, really cool tactics and things that they're doing. So I'm super excited to get started. I will have each one of them introduce themselves. They can tell you better about themselves than I can about them. So if you guys just want to go ahead down and say who you are, what you do. And
I'm Renata Riechelmann. I work at BISSELL. We sell vacuum cleaners, carpet cleaners. And I've been with BISSELL for about 4 years. I'm responsible for everything email and other tactics that touch email with customer acquisition and so on. So.
I'm Brian Schmidt. I am the Director of CRM and Retention at Fender Musical Instruments Company, also known as the Guitar Company. I am responsible for all things owned and operated for Fender, so email, push notifications, in-app messaging, SEO, among other things. Been there about a year, and just hawking guitars all day long.
And hopefully you all know me by now. Caroline Sheedy, Senior Manager at GasBuddy. I don't think I talked about what I was responsible for. All of our marketing across some of our programs, so I talked a lot about Pay with GasBuddy. I didn't really talk that much about the opportunities to earn free gas, but that particular program is my main focus. And I've been with GasBuddy for a year and a half.
Awesome, thanks guys. So one of the first things I want to talk about is, can you tell us a little bit about your overall email strategy? How much of it is strictly promotional? How much of it is purely content? And kind of what's that mix? Is it the same for all customers, different customers, get a different cadence, and a little bit more about that? Who wants to start?
I could start. I think most of our emails are promotional, some type of sale. We do have, I would say about 25% of our emails are content. I think it's still a challenge for us. We see that the engagement, unfortunately, engagement with content email is always a little bit lower. You would think it would be the other way around, where you're delivering value and they will engage with that a little more. So, but we don't really see that. We usually see people engaging with our offers and our sales. So it's really trying to find the right balance of not being 100% sales, but also trying to deliver a little bit of value to our customers.
So we have an interesting program because Fender as a digital company is only a couple years old. For most of you in the room, you know that Fender as a guitar brand, as a manufacturer, is about 73 years old. Our digital brand is about 3 or so years old. We actually have 3 mobile platforms and e-commerce. So 6 mobile apps and a website. And so across those, we have a very different mix of guitar players, bass players, ukulele players, where we actually have a learn to play guitar, bass, and ukulele subscription service. So the content that we serve to those people is sort of materially different than what we serve to our core audience, in that they're learners. They need to figure out what their first chords are, how to hold a guitar, and then we have people that are more interested in Fender Custom Shop and how to create several $1,000 highly customized guitars that are top of the line models that we have. So we're a little bit all over the place in the messaging that we send, and I think we're very, very much maturing as an email and communications business across push notifications, in-app messaging, everything. And for us, we don't really have, I don't think, a really super consistent like 50-50 split of editorial versus transactional yet. We're not very promotional in that we are a mapped brand. We are not on sale very often. So for us, a lot of what we send is new product introductions. It's a lot of content, because we do create really amazing content. If anybody's seen the Game of Thrones guitars, they're amazing. Check them out. $90,000 for the trio of them. I can get you a discount. But we produce content with everything that we do, and so we have videos with those of like Scott Ian and Brad Paisley and Tom Morello, all 3 of them together in a room playing the Game of Thrones guitars. You can't really get much cooler content, so we do share a lot of that stuff through email as well.
And at GasBuddy, we are almost entirely promotional in what we're doing. Between getting people or encouraging people to join our Pay with GasBuddy program, or encouraging people to make purchases in our affiliate marketing program, that's how we spend most of our emails. We do occasionally have some content that's focused around how people can better save, some tips and tricks on if they're going on a road trip, what they can do. But yeah, we are almost entirely promotional.
So kind of you answered this a little bit, but kind of leading into that next question of how do you engage with your customers in between purchases? So you guys all have a lot of great data about your customers, and how are you using that to determine, I should be saying this to this person now, or I should be saying this to this person now? We'll start.
Yeah. So because we are focused on trying to get people to use that Pay with GasBuddy card as much as possible, so that's one of the things that we're trying to do always. But it's very dependent upon how often people need gas. So we're trying to use some of that data too to trigger some messages to remind people to use their Pay with GasBuddy card. So if we know you fill up every 2 weeks on Wednesday, we'll try to send you a message on Tuesday to remind you to use that card. So that's a lot of how we're focused on keeping people engaged and keeping people thinking about our card.
Yeah, I think day of week is really important for us as well when we think about what our different engagement platforms are. So we have a free tuning app that people use right before they tune their guitar. So we fortunately then capture that data and know when they're playing the guitar, because guitar is inherently analog. And so we don't get the standard feedback loop that you might have with a lot of the digital products out here, especially like GasBuddy. And for us, knowing when people are playing is really important. And so we know that people play Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday morning, and Sunday pretty much all day, but heavily weighted in the afternoon. And so with that, we've positioned our onboarding experience for our Learn to Play app with those timeframes. And so we know when someone initially comes in, we trigger messaging based on that, but then we also do a flow that's sort of counter to when they came in and aligns with what we know to be true for when people play. And so finding that right balance is important for us on that side. On the core side, while people do buy guitar accessories frequently, like strings and things like that, the actual guitar purchase itself is relatively infrequent. And so we spend a lot of time doing this content-driven marketing that keeps people engaged with the brand, and we try and find the right balance of trying to sell them a new guitar versus just letting them know that there is new stuff available. The other big problem that we have, which we'll get into as we talk about data, is that our D2C business is very, very small. And so a lot of the actual transactions of Fender guitars that occur happen at our third-party retailers, Sam Ash, Sweetwater, Reverb, Guitar Center. And those guys are not great about sending us data back, and that they don't. And so for us, we don't have a lot of information about the actual transaction of the guitar to help us with our life cycle. Unlike Bissell, you guys have a little bit more information where you know, like, hey, this is our life cycle. It's 2 years or something along those lines. And so we know we need to keep them engaged until their next purchase. Same thing with like a mattress, right? You know when they purchase their mattress, so you know when the next one is, like when the next purchase is theoretically coming.
Yeah, for Bissell, so mainly I work with Bissell.com and all the transaction that happens with the direct business. So like you're saying, the people that buy at Walmart or Target, we don't get their information unless they come to Bissell.com and register their product. So from there, what do we do? Depending on the product that you have, if you have a carpet cleaner, we know you're going to need the shampoo to use your carpet cleaner. So then we keep you engaged by contacting you every 6 months or depending on the machine and what product you need with that machine, the frequency of the usage. We keep contact with you and try to sell you the replenishment items that you're going to need. A vacuum, you're going to need a filter. It's one thing that a lot of people that start at Bissell learn once they start working for Bissell, that if you have a vacuum, you need to change your filter every so often. So we try to educate people on that. And then we also use like temporal landmarks. So for example, summer's coming, and so you send an email and say, are you ready for summer? And then give them ideas of how they can keep their house clean during the summer. There are other products, not just vacuum. If you own a Bissell vacuum, maybe you need a steam cleaner. Or you know, when we're getting ready for the holidays and you're gonna have guests over, is your carpet clean? Maybe you need a carpet cleaner. So just trying to use different tactics like that.
Yeah, perfect. So this is always one of my favorite questions to talk to other email marketers about, but what is your biggest challenge? And I always say, if you had a magic wand or a fairy godmother of email, you know, what would you wish that they would give you to solve it? Brian, if you want to start.
Ooh, this is a tough one. So I feel like I just got like a partial wave of the wand at the beginning of this year because we transitioned from an old email system that we were on that didn't know anything that was happening in our system. There was no data connection at all. It knew when new users were created, and it knew when a Fender Play subscription was created, But beyond that, it didn't know anything. It didn't know what instrument you were playing in Fender Play. It didn't know what genre you were playing. It didn't know if you were playing at all, in fact. And we transitioned to a new system. We're using Iterable now, which is plugged into all of our data. So we use Segment as a data layer, and every event that happens in the Fender universe flows through Segment. And we have one single customer login for all of our platforms. And so when you're recognized, all of your data then flows onto that platform. It all flows into Redshift, but it also now all flows into Iterable. And so if someone watches a video in Fender Play, if they check out, if they tune their instrument in Fender Tune, all of that stuff ends up on a single unified customer profile, which is amazingly useful for us. Now, if I could wave a magic wand, all of that data would be accurate. In that we've made some historical mistakes on the engineering side, and some of the data that we get, everything with data, as you guys know, is garbage in, garbage out, right? And so we've done a lot of work to clean up some of the data that's coming through, especially from Fender Play. We've got some work to do on the Fender Tune side, and we're working our way through a lot of that. But if I could wave magic wand, it would take us less than a year to fix all of it. So.
Other than unlimited resources, I think I'd probably say more focus on automation. I think Veronica had talked about how her team has some behavioral triggers and a team in place to focus on that. Boy, I wish we had something like that. We have some behavioral triggers in place, but not nearly as many as we'd like. And so I think better and more focus on automation can really take our stuff to the next level.
Yeah, I think I would go along those lines because for us, we recently implemented a CDP, and it's been very slow because there's a learning curve with the tool itself, but then also resources and creatives to be able to implement all the campaigns and all the segmentation that we want to. So it's just it's been slow, and I think there's still a lot that we can learn. So definitely resources.
Yeah, perfect. And I know this is a huge topic for tomorrow. You guys had already talked about kind of that concept of the team of one. But you guys want to talk a little bit about, I feel like email teams are always those things where it's like, we are so slim and so agile and put out millions and millions of emails. And people come back and they're like, we need another email. And we're just like, okay. So what do you guys do, in those situations where, kind of overwhelmed or it's going to be a little bit too much? How do you kind of manage with your team and, agency partners and things like that?
I can start on that one. So one of the things that we've focused on in the last year is really learning Salesforce Marketing Cloud's AMP scripting capabilities. It's actually allowed us to do one email that has a bunch of different components depending on what types of attributes a user has. But it was a steep learning curve. But there's a woman on my team who took it head on, and it's really helped us take all of our stuff to the next level. It takes some of that personalization I was talking about earlier to actually make it out there, put it out in the world.
We've done some similar things with that as well, where our old welcome email for Fender Play was one version that assumed you were playing guitar and assumed you were playing rock. And the new version has 64 variations depending on instrument path, what platform you're on, what your SKU is, and whether or not you're actually playing. Like if you watch videos in your first session, things like that. And we use that same similar scripting to help us scale personalization. Now we've also scaled our team. We're fortunate, and probably one of the most fortunate in the room, of being able to really expand our staffing a lot around digital. As an old manufacturing brand, we're really investing in digital right now. And so when I started a year ago, there was one email person that actually quit the week before I started. And
usually how it works out.
Sometimes. Unfortunately, her backfill is amazing. But also, and it wasn't me, it was the person I hired. But our team is actually now up to 6 around CRM and retention. And so we have a handful of campaign specialists. I've got a couple of managing leaders that are effectively breaking down across triggered and transactional, but it's really more core and subscription businesses. But that's been a very, very helpful thing to us to find some scale, is to actually staff appropriately around it. And then also we leverage outside resources where we can't find internal ones.
Yeah, I was going to share, I know we talked about this, but talking about outside resources, we recently started doing some tests with Upwork. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Upwork. It's really a website that you go to get freelancers on every single subject and type of specialty that you can think of. So definitely they have designers. So we do a lot of that when there's like a last minute request, someone wants an email for next week, our internal creative team could not put an email together because they're probably working on the emails that are already on the calendar. So if we need something quick, we reach out to Upwork and can get an email like fairly quick within a few days. So
Yeah, awesome. That was a cool resource I did not know about. So very cool. So one of the things that I love about email, and you could see it a lot in the comment stuff, the responses to the surveys, how many cool and innovative things there are. So using AI with partners like Phrasey, using movable ink for things like personalization of location and really cool stuff like that. What are some of the cool things and innovative things that you guys are doing to help with your personalization and maintain your customer loyalty?
I can start. And you mentioned Movable Ink. I think we've started working with them a little less than a year ago, and it's been pretty cool for us because for us, knowing that someone owns a pet is huge because our pet owners have higher lifetime value and average order value. They are the most loyal customers that we have. So we always want to know if you're a pet owner, right? In the past, we would send an email out on the welcome series that you get once you sign up and say, hey, go to our profile center and answer a whole bunch of questions for us, like complete your profile. And who really wants to spend time to give a company like all their information for nothing, right? I mean, we would give them 10% off after that, but still, we didn't get like a huge, compliance there. So we started putting fun poll questions on the email. So something like, hey, who are the mess makers in your house? And then there's a pet, or there's a kid making a mess, or there's just adults like spilling wine or something like that. And just have people answer that. And once they answer that, then we update their profile. So we've been doing a few tactics like that, and I think it's work in progress because we always want more people to answer those polls. So we're constantly updating the design and trying to get more higher response rate. But it's been cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really good one.
I mentioned Iterable earlier. That's actually huge for us because all of our data is actually flowing into one place. We don't have a data science team. It's just not a thing that we've built yet. Our director of analytics, who was our first ever director of analytics, started in December. And he's just starting to staff his team. And so we're starting to get more into modeling and things. But what Iterable actually allows us to do is process our events through workflows. And so, for example, when we have someone come into Fender Play, they tell us instrument and genre. We take those events and through a workflow, we actually write them to the user's profile, and then we update them on future events that come through, so we always have a current path against their profile. When an order checkout event comes through, we take the information off of that order and we also write it to the profile, including we have a cell that has lifetime purchase value that we actually just do the math in the system and update their LTV. And so high LTV then can exist in the actual CRM and is processed by the CRM without needing an outside resource. And then we actually can send that to Facebook and to Google as well. So we can use that for then lookalike audiences and retargeting different things because we're processing that data all in one place, which actually happens to be in Iterable. And so that allows us to just do a ton of personalization and really update the way that we're doing things. I think year over year, we're sending roughly 60% fewer emails, but driving more than 150% more revenue. We're driving 25% plus more traffic, but a lot of it's on the back of sending better communications at the right time with actual like personalized information in them. We're doing a lot of things better, but a lot of it is driven by actually having data to do things better with.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate enough to have a data science team. The data scientist that works with us is a rock star, and he is spending a lot of his time looking at trends. So as it relates to our Pay with GasBuddy program, he's done a lot of work modeling out which states in the country are actually indexing higher than others, so that when we're sending some of our pay acquisition emails, it's more geared towards people in those particular states. So he's really helped us take our personalization from very little to much more targeted.
Yeah, awesome. I think this leads right into our next question about data and overall data structure. Brian clearly is like almost at data nirvana, but I think, for a lot of us, a lot of marketers, you're trying to figure out, okay, where is my data? I want to know this. Oh, that's in that table. I need to know this. Oh, that's in that table. I always say it's complete job security if you know what your data structure actually is, because most people are usually pretty confused about what lives where. So, what challenges do you guys have with your current structure? What's working for you and what's not working?
I can start off with that one. We're actually pretty lucky. I just talked about our data scientist. He is the person who knows where all of it is, and most of it is actually housed in one place. I think our biggest challenge with that is getting it from the database that we're using and into Salesforce Marketing Cloud so that we can then use it. But he has actually spent a lot of time recently becoming incredibly familiar with the automated file transfer processes in Salesforce. So we've been super lucky to have him.
Yeah, Nirvana's close. We just added Nirvana to Fender Play if anyone's looking to learn how to play. On an unrelated note. So one of the benefits of being sort of a 3-year-old digital company is that you don't have the legacy like SQL databases. And so when we built things, we built them on Redshift with Segment as a data layer. So we have a lot of new technology that connects things sort of automatically. Now, like I say, we did make a lot of data mistakes as we built things that pass through those pipes, which causes problems. But fortunately, we have a couple of really good data engineers that also came in the last 6 months. Our digital team is very, very new. I have tenure in the digital marketing team at 1 year in my particular portion of the organization. And having like those guys in, like they really understand how to process data. They can force things through Kinesis pipelines that spit out the good stuff on the other side that then gets passed through. So we have a lot of data quality that exists now, and we're going back and we're cleaning up some of the stuff from the past. I think the big problems that we still have are product registration. And so as I mentioned earlier, we don't sell very much of our own stuff. And so one of the things that we're trying to figure out, and we're going to start pushing more heavily, is people registering their products with us. And so trying to become the center for when people buy their first guitar, that they're coming to us and that we can help shepherd them through that journey of learning how to play. Because fun fact, 90% of people quit within 6 months of picking up a guitar for the first time. And so guitar itself has a retention problem. So as we start to capture that data, that's where we can ultimately drive a huge amount of LTV. Because I think, how many people in this room tried to play guitar and quit?
I tried piano and I quit.
I'll count it. And how many people in this room that play guitar own more than, I'll say, 3 guitars? How many people that play guitar in this room don't own more than 3 guitars? Yeah, so LTV is pretty high for guitar because people buy a lot of guitars. And so we know that we basically can turn someone from being effectively zero, because a lot of first guitars are borrowed or just borrowed from a friend or they're passed down. And that number can go to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of LTV. And so shepherding someone through that beginner stage is really important, but capturing the data to help them do that is a thing that we really need to do, and we're just getting started with.
Yeah, I think data is always going to be a challenge. I mean, we're always going to be working on that. And the reason I say that is we had a recent example. We have, like I mentioned before, we have a CDP now, so we try to feed all the data into the CDP so we can, as marketers, can use that on our marketing efforts. But then there's the other way around too. I was talking about the pet ownership thing, and we added "Are you a pet parent?" to our purchase confirmation email. So we're gathering that information, we're feeding that into Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and then to our CDP. And then when I shared this with our customer service team, okay, we updated our information, and this is the new purchase confirmation email, and then they came back and like, okay, are you feeding this back into Oracle Service Cloud so that we know they're a pet owner, so then now the data has to go the other way? So I think it's always like we always have to be thinking about the different places data has to go to. Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're at. I think there's still some work that needs to be done.
Yeah, data is certainly one of those things where you're never really, there's always something else.
Right,
there's always
exactly.
something new coming through. Awesome. So again, this is another one of my favorite, is talking about our failures. You know, a lot of people like to say, oh, everything we do is so great, but sometimes it just bombs. Everything bombs. You make a huge mistake, and I think we can all learn from each other. There's a really great group Renata and I are part of called Women of Email. And the group is that you share things that you're like, oh my gosh, I totally made this huge mistake. I can't believe I did this. You get the support. And so I just kind of wanted to kind of reiterate that with this group here to share with all of you. So what are some of your biggest failures or something that you really learned from that you didn't really necessarily want to learn from that way, but that you can share with the group?
Yeah, I can start. I don't think this is necessarily a failure, but some of the tactics that we've launched, we expected a much higher engagement, and then we're all excited to launch, and then, you know, a week goes by, you go back to look at the KPIs, and you're like, oh, only 2% answered that question. So I think it's just constant testing and learning, and never stop. It's never a set it and forget it type of tactic. You have to keep tweaking and making adjustments until you get to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I have quite a few email failures in my career. I'll pick the small ones. No, I think just as a very quick anecdote, I spent several years at Groupon as their head of North American customer acquisition and retention. I sent over 100 billion emails with them, which is more than some of the ESPs in this room send in a year. Just kidding. Although also true. Anyway, so we once sent an email to 52 million people that was just a header and a footer. There was no content in the middle of that email, which actually drove the same amount of revenue and clicks as a normal email. So not really a mistake. It was a mistake, but it didn't really hurt us. Which is crazy how things like that can happen.
Those oops emails, always
emails
get a
are
great
the best.
We didn't even send an oops email because we didn't notice the revenue bump. Like we got an email from the CEO. It's like, hey, I got a blank email. And we're like, oh. But then, you sort of move on from those types of mistakes. I think as much as like the data pipeline stuff is really great, we did accidentally send about 600,000 people a welcome email again the other day because our back-end team updated something that then triggered straight through the pipeline and triggered off our welcome email. We now have, we were like, this could never happen, and then it happened, and so now we've got a bunch of checks and balances in place to make sure stuff like that can't happen. But I think that's one of the things is like when certain parts of your environment are black box and you've got teams that can be working in silos, really getting to understand how people can impact your programs by doing even the littlest things like updating like the profile, like updated at date and stuff like that. So just being careful with that, I think, is how you avoid some of the big mistakes that can happen at the sort of the biggest scale for a given business.
Boy, mistakes are always super fun. I think it's the best way to learn stuff, but we've done a lot with personalization. One of the examples that I had actually shown earlier for the tank inference email, where we were showing users how much money they could save annually, we sent to somebody who drives a Tesla, who doesn't actually need to get gas. So we were telling them about all of this great money they could save filling their Tesla. And the person actually ended up posting it on Twitter with some really sarcastic remarks to it. But I think we learned the hard way that we need to think of all of the corner cases that we possibly can when it comes to personalization so that we can avoid stuff like that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys all for sharing your stories and for answering all of our questions. I think we'll open it up to the group.
Still morning everybody. Anthony Fiodo, I'm with eCommerce. So the first 20 years of my career I spent actually in the loyalty industry. So just an observation and a question for you as it relates to sending messages specifically to loyalty customers. I'm curious if you all are using your loyalty agencies to drive the marketing communication to the loyalty people, to loyalty folks, or if you're using your ESP to do that with them as basically a sub-segment. So I'm just curious about the intersection there and if it's working or not.
I can start with that one. So Fender doesn't have a loyalty program specifically. So we don't have a loyalty we don't have a loyalty agency or loyalty programs or anything like that. That is coming for us. But as we think about loyalty amongst the brand, we think of high value guitar players, custom shop buyers, and also artists. And we have a very large artist management team. As we think about segmentation of our group, is where we get into really specific campaigns for those people, and that's where we do have trouble with scale a lot, is in that we have 10,000 really valuable users that we want to send a really specific message to, and so that every campaign that your coder codes is one campaign regardless of how many people it's going to, and that's where we find a little bit of problem in our scale of loyalty. But I think as we work towards our sort of stronger digital foundations, building out the way that we do segmentation, dynamic content, things like that, we'll get better along those lines. But ultimately, we're processing that information in our ESP because we don't have third-party loyalty programs, and we're not leveraging our database because our database already exists on our ESP.
Yeah, we have a BISSELL rewards program, but it's a program that was built in-house, and it's not where we want it to be. We definitely are talking about partnering with a third-party company to help us with that.
And I think GasBuddy is in the same boat as Fender. We don't necessarily have a loyalty program, but same deal. We've got our high-value users, people who are not only joining Pay with GasBuddy, but upgrading to actually pay us. And we're doing all of that segmentation within our ESP.
How are you handling recency of data, making sure that you're updating, and how are you determining what and which data points are growing stale and becoming less useful?
That's a fun one. Yeah. I had mentioned before, our data scientist has become very intimately familiar with how all of the file sharing works or file dropping works with Salesforce Marketing Cloud. But I think we're just starting to crack the surface of what needs to get updated multiple times a day versus just once. Right now, all of our data is just once, but now that we've introduced this affiliate marketing stuff, we've got people making purchases, and then we're trying to send an email out that same day, and it becomes a little bit irrelevant.
That's an interesting question for us. We're, as I mentioned, still pretty new in how we do email and sort of how, like we started to put in place 101. Like when I started, we didn't have abandoned cart emails. Our onboarding flow was like 2 emails long, and it was like day 0 and day 1 for a 30-day trial. So we're still, like we sort of put in place 101 and we're trying to jump to 301. Part of 301 is understanding, hey, when is a person not a beginner anymore? So like they came into Fender Play a year ago. Assuming they're still an active member and they're still actively using the site, they're really no longer a beginner. They're probably beginner plus to intermediate. Even if they're learning slowly, they're gonna be more advanced in the beginning level content than we would probably be sending them. So trying to identify level of player is a big one, and then the other thing is trying to get to a place where we're actually capturing what someone's entire guitar collection is. And so, as shown by several people in this room, people own multiple guitars, and those guitars will constantly change across the course of their life. Like they may own a Strat for 6 months and they'll trade it to a buddy for their Telly, or they may trade it to a Gibson or an Ibanez, because most people that own 3+ guitars don't own exclusively one brand, which we know, love, and respect. And so that's one where understanding what someone's full collection is and what they're actually playing does matter a lot. People also switch genres across the course of their lifetime. So as we start to capture that information, understanding when that information might change is a big part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think we haven't really given much thought to that. I think it's probably something we would need to look into. I know that every once in a while we're talking about personalization and people are like, hey, let's get the pet's name. Let's have people give us the name of their dog, and then we can send an email with that. And I don't like that, because dogs can pass, and then all of a sudden you're sending an email with the name of a dog that's no longer there. So we have to be really careful, but that's a great point. And just being careful with what kind of information you're using, and if it's recent and valid.
And also, too, what data are you using for specific campaigns versus what data you need for a campaign that's always on. Mm-hmm. You know, there's certain data you're passing. You have a campaign that maybe runs once a week or once a month or something like that, and you're like, okay, I need to pass this in, or whatever is the most recent right before this campaign is going to go out, versus that, okay, what do I constantly need that's kind of in your everyday or, you know, multiple times per day data feed.
Marissa and panel, we're going to continue this in the roundtable at the end of the morning. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.